P.T. Barnum, at your service. I'm putting together a show, and I need a star. Every one of us is special, and nobody is like anyone else. That's the point of my show. Ready? Showtime.
I don't remember what your rating was, but I remember you weren't crazy about it.
Yeah, that's all I remember.
So The Greatest Showman, I guess I'll just list these things real quick for the sake of it. Directed by Michael Gracie, written by Jenny Bix and Bill Condon, which is weird. Bill Condon was a screenwriter on this thing. Yeah, I know. Wow. Okay. Starring Hugh Jackman, Zac Efron, Michelle Williams, Rebecca Ferguson, Zendaya, a bunch of other people, and cinematography by Seamus McGarvey. I think he shot some of the Avengers movies, actually. And this is a Fox film. It's finally, Disney Plus is finally starting to dump some Fox content onto their platform over the last week and a half or so. So we're getting actually finally some new things on the dashboard. So I came home from getting groceries or something, and we were watching, my family was already watching it, and my wife was like, "Oh, you never saw this?" I was like, "No, I never saw it." So they restarted it for me. I gave this film 2 stars, and I gave it 2 stars because, what's engaging are the musical numbers and the dance choreography. Everything that is most important about this movie, which are not most important, but most important for what makes this movie unique in its form, I guess, or not even unique. God, what am I trying to say? What works for this movie as a movie that wants to be a musical are the musical elements. I like the music, even though they're kind of a little bit poppy to me. Dance choreography is really well done. And it cements it, as something where I'm just sort of like, I don't know. I would have liked to see this on the stage, but I don't know why I have to see it as a film, because the messaging here is really obvious. It's a very obvious story about let's all accept each other as we are, and everyone's a person, and it doesn't really matter if you're a bearded lady or you're like a little person or a conjoined twin or black, it's, we're all people and we should accept each other and no one's like a freak or whatever. It's a very obvious thing about a bunch of members of a circus, of a so-called freak show, but how they're not actually freaks. They're people. It's like, okay, great. That's great. It's not wrong. It's obvious. It's plain to see for us simple-minded viewers who need to be reminded of common humanity, I guess. I don't know. Sure. Maybe we do. Maybe we do, but maybe we don't all the time, constantly.
Sure.
Normally there's a recommended layer of complex characters that you like to slide that messaging underneath so that we actually get some engaging story and growth while being fed these obvious platitudinal messages. But this doesn't really have it. It's about P.T. Barnum, or a version of P.T. Barnum, becoming, the greatest showman, becoming the guy who creates the circus and creates show business almost, and does it by finding these odd people and putting them up and charging admission to come see them, and then how success goes to his head, and yada yada yada. And there's singing and dancing and romance and good vibes, I guess, and Hugh Jackman is, I don't blame him, especially post Wolverine, for really just wanting to lean into his talents, which is the stage. When he auditioned for Wolverine, he was doing Oklahoma on the stage, and he had a perm. He's a theater kid, and all these people, I got very strong, obviously theater nerd vibes, and I've been around theater nerds. I know what they're like, and they're a very tight knit group of people, and they're very, very proud of their black sheepedness. They're very proud of being misfits. Probably more so than other, outcasted groups. They're very close. And so I just kept getting, and not to mention this is all about showmanship and theaters and ropes backstage and all that kind of stuff. So I got it. I get it. I just think it's candy. And I heard I feel like I heard this entire soundtrack for like my daughter's recital the year it came out, because of course they grabbed all the songs from it. So every time a song came up, I was like, oh, I know this. Okay, so I already know the song, so I'm sitting here during the song, I'm not experiencing anything new. And then you realize, oh, the song itself is supposed to like carry you through the scene and not like the character dynamics. Yeah. Although there are beats that are well acted when it matters, any interactions of rudeness and people rising up and, finding the strength within themselves, those are all well acted beats. But I just can't handle characters singing into the face of their oppressors, or, with very obvious lyrics like, this is who I'm meant to be, this is me, and just like looking at the people that hate them, just kind of like, yeah, man, this is me. I'm just like, I'm not into that, because that's too like, I don't like that. I like things like Les Miserables. It's too on the nose. And like in something like Les Miserables, at least, you have people who are really trying to character act the moments that they are singing. Even though they're singing and there's musical notes, they're trying to give a true realistic performance. And I'm just not into musical, big play to the back row performances, because I feel like that's what you go to the theater to see. I don't like seeing that in movies, and that's just my personal, that's what I like in films. So
well, I'll tell you what stuck with me about the film all these, I don't know when I saw it, all this year later or whatever.
Probably a couple of years ago.
Maybe so. Is mostly everything that you're saying. Like it feels very big. And like when I think about it in my head, it's a lot of like, playing to the back row. It's a lot of like huge stuff. Yeah. And it's like, you don't have to do that. It's film. Like give me a close up. It's a film.
I know.
Like you have this language of cinema that you can use to tell your story. Use it.
Right.
It's not good enough to just say like, okay, we're making a stage play and then we're going to throw some cameras. Like you have to use the language of cinema to tell me the story through composition and through, motivated camera movements. And you're right. Like a little bit of subtlety or subtext goes a long way. So instead of singing like, this is me, I am great, I am awesome, accept me. Like you have to like tell a different story through song that subtextually is a reminder of the plight of the characters. And it goes so much further, because you also have to think about it like this. Look, I've made no qualms that I'm not a huge musical theater person.
Right.
I of course have hung out with theater people when I was in school, but as far as musicals go, like straight up musicals, it's never been my cup of tea. Because I'm one of those people that can't like, I just can't get past the idea of like, are we singing this or is this in your head? Is this, I just can't, like, especially on film, because it's like, you're supposed to be showing me some level of realism and like reality. So when you're singing at somebody's face, like, this is me, I'm like, are you like, is that what you want to be doing?
Is
but
it
you're not
meant to
doing
be
it?
that like, is it meant to be that blatant of a message to where the person is meant to react like, well, God, okay.
Okay.
You don't have to yell at
really
me.
Weird. Yeah. It's so strange, but like, yeah, I'm one of those people. I'll admit it. Like I'm one of those people. I have issues with that. But what I remember is like, it just feels so, outdated. It's a form of storytelling that I think doesn't exist much anymore, and probably for good reason. It exists on the stage because that's where it needs to be, but film has diverged from theater, and so and that's why you don't see much of this anymore. And like in the early days of film, you'd see basically just theater, but we filmed it,
Right.
and then film went in its own little direction because you have auteurs and you have, you know, your Orson Welles's and your Alfred Hitchcock's and your, you know, Steven Spielberg's is, and like all these people that, you know, moved film into this area that was unique unto itself. And so eventually film didn't have to be that. So it's weird when we get something like or Cats or Les Miserables or any of these other things where to me, it just feels a little bit outdated. And so, yes, the story can be great. And yes, the performances can be great. Here, I'd say at least the performances are great. But it always feels a little bit outdated. So when I think back on it now, 2 years later or whatever, having seen it, it feels big and it feels outdated. And that's all I can say. And but it's outdated, but in a weird way. Like you said, the music is poppy, so it's like it's outdated, but the music is modern.
Yeah,
and it just feels like it's at odds with itself. Like, do you want to be like, you couldn't write music that's of its era, that's like, you know, theatrical and circusy. You had to make like, you know, poppy music that just doesn't.
It's just weird to me seeing a near 50-year-old man like dancing and you know, with a top hat going like, oh damn, now you're in the game. And I'm like, it's just so strange. It's like that was the bench, not my butthole. I'm just
no, that wasn't the bench.
It was, seriously. I now sit in this bench so you don't have to hear my chair creaking, and it came back to bite me so much. Quick, I'll sing a song to distract you from that. Oh, I didn't fart, but it sounded like I did. This is me. Stop it. Dustin, you by laughing at me, you're mocking my personhood, and I don't appreciate you belittling me as such.
I'm sorry.
I'm not a freak.
I didn't realize how
fragile my ego was. Yeah, man. It's fine. Look, it's a well-intentioned movie, and I'm sure that this is one of those things. Like, look, listen, I have accepted at this point. I just have to accept the fact, at least for now, that people think I'm an asshole because I don't just take candy movies and just sit and just pretend that they're good just because they're inoffensive. It's like, that's fine. They're inoffensive, but that's not the kind of, it's not like I want to see offensive movies, but like,
sure.
But I don't think that just watching a movie and feeling neutral is acceptable in terms of recommending it to people. So I don't recommend The Greatest Showman to people, but I don't just think it was fine. I mean, it just, I have problems with overly simplistic, glossed over stories where we just talk about acceptance and, hey, let's all accept each other. It's like, that's fine. But I feel like whenever we do that, we're not presenting a world that's complex and realistic, that has an actual actionable story to show people. Yeah, listen, even in like 17th century Scotland, we there are ways, you know, there have been ways to find, you know, we're always, and I find that we always telling these stories about acceptance in a period story somewhere. It's never like 2020 where we're like, hey, let's accept each other. It's like, you really want to make so that tells me one of two things. Either we accept each other, but we want to still make movies about acceptance, so we have to date them back when people really weren't accepted for who they were, or we're too scared to actually make a movie in 2020 where maybe we are not all accepted as we are still. No, like let's cast a film. It's 2020 and let's talk about being accepted as we are, because we mostly are, but we aren't, but it's not like as much out there. So it's harder to, you can't just, you know, we're all allowed to eat in the same restaurants as each other. So it's not like, I don't know what it is.
It's a way of making it inoffensive because you remove from their responsibility. You set it in the past, and then you say, "Oh, look, this is how bad things were."
Right.
And it's this weird thing where the audience can say, "Yeah, things were bad."
Yeah.
And so
We're
and
good
so
now,
all
though.
of the but that's
I'm not doing anything wrong.
That's the weird flip side of it is
Yeah.
it promotes an idea that like we've reached the zenith of prejudice and racism, and we've come out the other side.
Yeah,
right.
We're good now.
And right. And okay, I don't know, but I will say like it essentially it's the same thing as like all the movies in like the 80s and whatnot where the villains were always Nazis.
Yeah.
Right. Like in the 80s and the 90s, because that's like the easiest form of storytelling, because you don't even have to craft your villain. You just have to put him in that
Why are
SS
they doing this?
uniform, and everyone in the audience is going to go, I hate that guy.
Yeah.
And so it's like the easiest form of storytelling. So it's the same thing as this. It's like, oh, I want to tell the story about how people aren't accepted, and we need to accept people. So I'm going to set it up against like, the civil rights movement. And it's like, yes, I'm sure this is valid, but at a certain point, you're just like using cheap shortcuts to get the audience on the side of your main character and against the jerks who you can exaggerate and again like paint them in this like, oh, just they're in the outfit of the villain, so they're the villain. And then you don't even have to establish that or really, I don't know, you don't even have to paint it. You just have to say it. They're in the uniform of the villain, and then that's all you need. So yeah, I've noticed that too.
Yeah, and I think it doesn't even bother me, because this would make me spiteful. So it bothers me a little bit that a movie like The Greatest Showman, it's not that I don't like that it has this widespread popularity or success, but it bothers me that people like that's what they settle for.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this, and every year there's some film, it's like, this is the film. If you've ever felt left out, if you've ever felt like, this movie, really? Is this the one is this the hill we're dying on? The Greatest Showman is the ultimate acceptance film?